There's a quiet kind of power that most people overlook. The power of stillness. A high-value woman doesn't speak to be heard. She speaks when silence has done its work. Before her words, there's presence. Before her voice, there's awareness. You can feel it when she walks into a room. She doesn't need to compete for attention. Energy shifts naturally around her. Her calmness speaks louder than words ever could. It's not a performance, it's coherence. When her breath, her thoughts, and her emotions all move in harmony. Most people listen to respond. She listens to understand. Most speak from tension. She speaks from truth. This isn't about being passive or distant. It's about being grounded, knowing that emotional discipline isn't suppression. It's strength in its purest form. Because when you can stay calm in the heat of emotion, you don't lose your voice, you refine it. And that quiet, centered energy is what makes a high-value woman unforgettable.
Have you ever walked into a room and immediately felt someone's energy before they even say a word? It's hard to explain, but you just feel it, the way their presence fills the space. That is the quiet power of a woman who's grounded in herself. Let me paint you a picture. Two women enter the same room. The first one smiles too quickly. She talks fast, gestures a lot, laughs a little louder than she feels inside. Her heart means well, she just wants to connect, but her body's working overtime. Her eyes dart around, searching for approval, checking if she's being liked, accepted, seen. Then the second woman walks in. She doesn't rush. Her shoulders are relaxed, her steps soft but steady. She doesn't force eye contact, she simply arrives. When she finally speaks, her words come slow, clear, each one landing like a stone dropped into still water. No effort, no performance, and yet everyone feels her. That's not charisma in the usual sense. That's coherence, when your thoughts, emotions, and body are all in alignment. It's a kind of inner harmony that others can sense, even if they can't explain it. Science actually has a name for this: mirror neurons. They're the part of our brain that unconsciously imitates the emotional state of the people we're with. So when someone is calm, steady, centered, our nervous system feels it too. That's why being around a grounded person feels like taking a deep breath. You see, presence isn't about how much you talk or how clever you sound. It's not about commanding attention. It's about being fully in your body, not chasing reactions, not rehearsing your next line, just being here. And this kind of presence, it doesn't come from trying to impress people. It grows in the silence between your breaths, in the moments when you stop performing and simply let yourself be enough. Eastern philosophy has always understood this. The Tao doesn't shout. The moon doesn't beg to be seen. The river doesn't rush, yet it shapes the stone. In the same way, a woman rooted in herself doesn't need to prove anything. Her calmness does the talking. Her stillness carries the message. I once met a woman like that in a workshop. She didn't speak much, but when she did, everyone listened. Not because she demanded attention, but because her words came from a place of quiet certainty. You could tell she wasn't trying to sound wise. She was being wise. And you could feel it in the way your body relaxed when she spoke. That's what true presence does. It regulates the space around you. When you're grounded, you give others permission to ground themselves too. When you're calm, you remind others that it's safe to slow down. And when your energy is coherent, it creates trust without needing to convince anyone of anything. So maybe the real question isn't, how do I make people listen to me? But rather, how can I be so at peace with myself that my energy speaks before I do? Because presence, real presence, doesn't shout, it doesn't compete, it doesn't chase. It simply is. And when a woman stands in that kind of stillness, the world doesn't just hear her, it feels her. So the next time you walk into a room, pause, take a breath, let your shoulders drop. Don't rush to fill the silence. Let the silence work for you. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is said long before you open your mouth.
You know, one of the most underrated forms of love isn't what we say, it's how we listen. Most people listen just enough to reply. Very few listen to understand. And when we finally meet someone who truly listens, really listens, something inside of us exhales. I've seen this over and over in relationships. A man who's been silent for years suddenly opens up, not because someone had the perfect advice, but because for the first time he felt safe in someone's presence. That's the secret most of us miss. When you stop trying to be right, when you put down the need to fix, to prove, to win, you give the other person a gift that words can't match, the feeling of being understood. There's a line I love from a woman I met during a meditation retreat. She had been married for 40 years. When someone asked her the secret to their closeness, she smiled and said, "I never tried to be his mirror. I tried to be his lake." Everyone went quiet. She explained, "When my husband came home restless, I didn't reflect that restlessness back at him. I didn't argue or analyze. I simply became still, like water. And eventually, he would calm down too." That story stayed with me, because real listening isn't passive. It's an act of quiet strength. To listen like still water means you let someone's words enter you without disturbing your peace. You don't rush to interpret or defend. You hold space, open, gentle, aware. You hear not just what they say, but what they mean. The emotion underneath the words, the need beneath the complaint. And yes, that's hard, especially when you're hurt or misunderstood. It takes maturity to stay calm when everything inside you wants to interrupt. But that's where the transformation happens. You see, when one person in a relationship can stay grounded, the whole nervous system of the conversation changes. Instead of a battlefield, it becomes a bridge. Instead of who's right, it becomes what's real. Modern psychology has a term for this: attunement. It's the ability to sense and respond to the emotional state of another person. And it's one of the most important factors in lasting love. But long before psychology gave it a name, the ancients already knew. In Eastern wisdom, Water has always symbolized awareness, soft, quiet, yet powerful enough to shape stone. When you listen like water, you stop trying to control the flow. You allow it to move through you, and somehow it finds its balance. Think about it. How many arguments in life were never really about who was right, but about who felt unseen? Sometimes the deepest healing doesn't come from saying, "I understand you," but from proving it with your silence, your attention, your calm. So when the people you love come to you, upset, distant, or confused, don't rush to fill the space. Let the silence breathe. Look at them with curiosity instead of conclusion. And if you can, remind yourself quietly, I don't need to be right. I need to understand. That one shift changes everything. It turns defensiveness into safety. It turns noise into connection. It teaches both hearts that love doesn't always need more words. Sometimes it just needs more stillness. And maybe that's what the world is missing right now. Not louder voices, but calmer ones. Not quicker replies, but deeper listening. Because in the end, when you listen like still water, you become the place where others can rest. You become the mirror that reflects not their chaos, but their calm. And sometimes, that quiet understanding is the most healing sound a human heart will ever hear.
Have you ever noticed how, in the heat of emotion, your mind seems to disappear? It's like you know you should stay calm, but your body takes over. Your heart races, your breath shortens, and before you realize it, you've said something you wish you hadn't. That's not weakness, that's biology. When our emotions surge, a small part of the brain called the amygdala hits the alarm button. It screams, "Danger," even if no real threat exists. And when that happens, the wiser part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, the one that helps you think clearly, empathize, and see the bigger picture, goes offline. Emotional discipline isn't about suppressing what you feel. It's about keeping the mind online while the heart is on fire. It's the ability to pause, breathe, and stay connected to yourself, even when your world feels shaky. Let me tell you a story about a woman named Mira. She's in her early 50s. After years of raising kids and going through a divorce, she finally started dating again. Things were going well with a man she truly liked, until one weekend, after they'd grown emotionally close, something changed. He became distant. No explanation, no message, just silence. You can imagine the storm inside her, questions spinning, insecurities rising. Did I do something wrong? Did I share too much? Did he lose interest? Her first impulse was to reach for her phone and send a long text, to demand answers, to fill the silence, to regain control. But she didn't. Instead, Mira stopped. She sat down, she took a slow, deep breath, and she remembered what she'd learned in meditation, that not every emotion needs to be solved immediately. Some simply need to be witnessed. So she waited until her heartbeat slowed, and then she wrote just one sentence. I noticed a shift in your energy. When you're ready to talk, I'm here. That's it. No blame, no begging, just awareness and dignity. And that's the difference between reaction and response. See, emotional discipline isn't about being cold or detached. It's about feeling everything fully, but choosing your expression wisely. Because when you pause, even for 5 seconds, you give your nervous system a chance to reset. Your breath tells your brain, "I'm safe." And once the body calms down, the mind can see clearly again. It's like standing in front of a still lake versus a stormy one. When the water is calm, it reflects the sky perfectly. But when it's agitated, everything looks distorted. Our emotions work the same way. When we speak in the middle of the storm, we don't reflect truth. We reflect turbulence. So the next time you feel triggered, pause, breathe. Don't rush to fix it, explain it, or send the text that you'll later regret deleting. Just be with what's rising, because that space between the feeling and the reaction, that's where wisdom lives. That's where self-respect is born. You might be thinking, but if I don't say something, won't I look weak? Won't I seem like I don't care? No. In fact, the opposite. When your emotions don't control you, people feel your strength. They trust your steadiness. They know you'll speak when it matters, not just when you're uncomfortable. True emotional power is quiet. It's not the explosion, it's the stillness that keeps the fire contained. It's knowing that your peace is too precious to hand over to anyone's inconsistency. Mira told me later that when the man eventually reached out, she didn't feel anxious or desperate. She felt calm, grounded. She realized she didn't need closure from him. She already had it within herself. That's what happens when you learn to feel deeply without drowning. You stop chasing emotional balance from others because you've built it inside your own breath. So remember, when the wave of emotion hits, don't fight it and don't let it carry you away. Just anchor yourself, breathe, and let the water settle. Because when the storm passes, and it always does, you'll see clearly again. And in that clarity, you'll realize something powerful. Peace was never lost. It was just waiting for you to stop reacting long enough to return to it.
You know, a lot of people misunderstand boundaries. They think having boundaries means shutting people out, being too guarded or too independent. But that's not what real boundaries are. A boundary isn't a wall. It's a door. A door that says, this is how you can come in. This is how love can stay safe here. Because love without boundaries isn't love. It's confusion. It's a river with no banks. It spills everywhere, and eventually it loses its strength. Boundaries don't kill intimacy. They protect it. They give love a shape so it can actually grow. Let me tell you about Hannah. She's gentle, kind, and warm. The kind of woman who's always given more than she's received. For years, she said yes when she wanted to say no. She smiled through discomfort, hoping that patience would make her people love her more. But all it did was teach them that her silence was permission. Then one day, something shifted. She met a man she really liked, honest eyes, good energy, but he wanted to move faster than she did emotionally. And instead of pretending she was okay with it, Hannah took a slow breath and said softly, "I care about you, but I don't share physical closeness without emotional clarity. If you're not ready for that, I respect your journey, but I'll walk mine." No anger, no guilt, no explaining herself into exhaustion, just truth, spoken calmly. And you know what happened? He didn't walk away. He listened. He respected her more, because truth, when spoken with peace, has its own gravity. See, most people think they have to raise their voice to be heard, but often it's the calm tone that makes others lean in. Because when you speak from grounded energy, your words don't fight, they land. That's what soft boundaries are about. They're not about shutting people down, they're about showing them where your peace lives and inviting them to meet you there. But there's another kind of boundary that's even more important, the ones we set with ourselves, the inner ones, the quiet promises we make in the dark. I won't betray my intuition just to be liked. I won't stay where my energy is constantly drained. I'll pause, breathe, and respond, not react. Because if you don't honor your own limits, no one else will. And every time you cross your own line, your soul feels it. That little ache in your chest when you say yes, but mean no, that's your body whispering, you just left yourself behind. Boundaries aren't about control, they're about clarity. They're not cold, they're compassionate. You're saying, I care enough about both of us to be honest about what feels right. And the beautiful thing is when your boundaries come from peace, not anger, they teach others how to treat you without ever needing a lecture. They don't provoke defensiveness, they invite respect. In a world where everyone's shouting to be understood, a calm boundary is like still water, steady, clear, reflecting truth. So if you've ever been told you're too sensitive, too strong, or too much for having standards, remember this: a boundary is not a rejection of love, it's the foundation of love. It's saying, I will meet you, but not at the cost of losing myself. And that's not selfish, that's sacred. So the next time you need to draw a line, do it with softness. Do it with grace, not to punish someone, but to protect the peace that allows love to bloom. Because the right people won't fear your boundaries, they'll recognize them as a sign that you know how to love with awareness. And that kind of love, the one built on clarity, calmness, and self-respect, that's the kind that lasts.
You know, one of the greatest sources of wisdom we have isn't in books or even in the mind. It's right here, in the body. Most of us were never taught to listen to it. We learned to trust logic, to explain things, to rationalize emotions. But the body, it knows long before the mind does. Real presence begins there, in that quiet awareness of your breath, the subtle tightening in your chest, that uneasy flutter in your stomach. Those sensations, they're not random. They're messages, your body trying to speak the truth your mind hasn't caught up to yet. Think about it. How many times in your life have you said, something feels off, but you ignored it, only to realize later you were right? That was your intuition speaking through sensation. Your body doesn't lie, it whispers. In the world of mindfulness, there's a term for this: somatic wisdom. It means learning to let your body guide your emotional awareness, to notice how it contracts when something feels wrong, and how it expands when you're aligned with truth. I once spoke with a woman who embodied this beautifully. She was in a meeting where the tone suddenly shifted. The conversation turned manipulative, though nothing rude was said. She felt her shoulders tighten, her breath shorten, her palms grow warm. Instead of pushing through, she paused and said softly, "I don't feel safe continuing this conversation right now. Let's revisit it later."
That's it. No drama, no defensiveness, no long explanation. Just a calm acknowledgement of what her body already knew. And here's the thing. The moment she said it, the room shifted. People slowed down. The tension broke. Because calm truth has a frequency. It doesn't need to argue. It regulates. That's what body wisdom does. It helps you honor your boundaries without noise. It helps you protect your peace without apology. See, the body and the mind are in constant conversation, but we often silence one to obey the other. We overthink feelings instead of feeling them. We ignore the quiet signals, the shallow breath, the jaw tightening, the heaviness in the gut, until they become symptoms, anxiety, fatigue, resentment. But when you learn to pause and ask, what is my body telling me right now? You begin to navigate life differently. If you walk into a room and suddenly feel drained, that's not weakness, it's information. If your breath gets shallow when you're around a certain person, that's not coincidence, it's feedback. If your shoulders drop and your chest opens when you talk to someone, that's not magic, that's resonance. The body keeps score, not as punishment, but as protection. It's your internal compass showing you what's safe, what's real, what's aligned. And the more you learn to trust it, the quieter your life becomes, because you no longer need to argue with your instincts. You no longer second guess what peace feels like. This doesn't mean you let emotions run the show. It means you use your body's signals as data, not drama. You let the sensations inform your decisions, not control them. And over time, this practice builds an unshakable kind of confidence. Not the loud kind, but the steady kind that comes from knowing, deep in your bones, when something is right for you and when it isn't. So the next time you feel tension rising or energy shifting, pause, breathe. Ask your body what it knows that your mind hasn't said yet. Because truth doesn't always shout. Sometimes it speaks through the tightening of your chest, the stillness of your breath, the warmth in your palms. And when you learn to listen, you stop chasing clarity outside yourself. You become it. That's the wisdom of the body. It doesn't demand attention. It earns it, quietly, faithfully, every time you choose to listen before you react.
Have you ever noticed how some people can say the simplest thing and it just lands differently? It's not about the words they use. It's about how they say them. A calm voice carries weight. It doesn't need to rise. It doesn't need to convince. It simply speaks, and the room listens. That's the quiet power of emotional discipline in your voice. See, when your voice is peaceful, it tells the other person you're safe here. And when someone feels safe, they stop defending. They start listening. It's not psychology trickery. It's biology. When your tone is calm, you activate something called the parasympathetic nervous system in the listener, the part of the brain that relaxes, opens, and receives. But when your tone is tense or sharp, you trigger the amygdala, the brain's alarm bell. And then no matter how wise your words are, they can't be heard because the listener's body is busy preparing for battle. That's why the most powerful people, The ones who truly command a room rarely shout. Their voices aren't loud, they're steady. They speak from the ground, not from the throat. And that grounded energy communicates far more than volume ever could. Let me tell you a small secret from vocal training and mindfulness practice. Your voice is shaped by your posture and your breath long before it leaves your mouth. When your shoulders are tight, your jaw clenched, and your breath stuck in your chest, your voice becomes thin, high, uncertain. But when your spine lengthens, your shoulders drop, and you take a deep, full breath from the belly, your voice deepens naturally. It becomes warmer, rounder, more resonant. You don't have to force confidence. Your body creates it for you. I remember once watching an older woman speak at a small retreat. She wasn't flashy, she wasn't loud, she barely moved. But when she began to talk, the room fell silent. Her words had gravity. She said, "You don't need to raise your voice when your energy is already elevated." And I thought, that's it. That's the difference. We're so used to fighting to be heard that we forget peace is magnetic. The steadier your voice, the deeper it travels. It doesn't shout into the noise, it cuts through it. Now, I'm not saying you should suppress emotion or sound robotic. Quite the opposite. A disciplined voice doesn't hide emotion, it guides it. You can be firm and kind at the same time. You can express passion without aggression. Because it's not what you say that creates trust, it's the state you say it from. Here's something to try. Next time you need to express a difficult truth, before you speak, pause. Take one slow breath. Feel your feet on the ground. Let your shoulders drop. And then speak, not from the chest, not from the mind, but from the center of your being. You'll notice instantly how different it feels and how different people respond. Because your nervous system sets the tone for everyone else's. When you're regulated, others unconsciously mirror you. Your calm becomes contagious. And suddenly, what could be an argument turns into understanding. The voice, at its best, isn't a weapon, it's an instrument. It can either create tension or build harmony. And the way you use it determines the atmosphere around you. So when you speak, don't aim to be impressive, aim to be clear. Don't aim to dominate, aim to connect. Because true strength doesn't roar, it resonates. And the beauty of that kind of strength is you don't have to prove it. People feel it. So remember, straight spine, relaxed shoulders, balanced head, deep breath. From that stillness, your voice will carry more power than shouting ever could. Because it's not the volume that moves people, it's the stillness behind the sound.
There's a woman I once worked with named Alina. She's one of those people who always had something kind to say, warm, generous, full of life. But beneath that energy, there was a quiet fear. She told me one day, "I talk too much when I'm nervous. I hate silence. I feel like if I don't keep the conversation going, people lose interest." Can you relate to that? That need to fill the air, to make sure there's no awkward pause, no sign of disconnection. Most of us have been there. For Alina, silence felt dangerous. It felt like rejection waiting to happen. So she'd keep talking, explaining, reassuring, entertaining, anything to avoid that space where things went quiet. But what she didn't realize was that her fear of silence was exactly what kept her from being heard. Because here's the truth. When we speak from anxiety, people feel our energy before they understand our words. The words may sound confident, but the body, the breath, the eyes, the tone reveal something else. And people don't always know what they're feeling, but they sense it. So we began with something simple. No psychology lecture, just breath. Every morning, Alina practiced sitting in stillness, spine upright, shoulders soft, hands resting on her lap. She'd take slow, deep breaths and notice what silence felt like in her body. The restlessness, the tension in her chest, the urge to move or speak. She just watched it. And with time, she learned something beautiful. The silence wasn't empty. It was alive. It was where her presence lived. We also worked on posture and pacing. How standing tall changes the tone of your voice. How slowing down your speech changes the rhythm of a conversation. Because when you're grounded in your breath, your energy begins to speak before your mouth ever does. A few months later, she came back to me, eyes soft, voice steady. She said, "Something strange happened. I didn't say much on our last date. I just breathed and listened. And at the end, he told me, 'You make me feel safe, not entertained, safe.'" That moment, that sentence, changed her entire perspective on connection. Because for years, she thought she had to be interesting to be loved. Now she understood she only needed to be present. You see, when a woman stops performing and starts simply being, something powerful happens. The energy in the room shifts. The nervous systems around her, especially men who often carry silent stress, begin to relax. They don't feel judged. They don't feel like they're being handled or impressed. They feel seen. That's the real essence of feminine power, not the effort to pull attention, but the ability to create safety. And the beauty of it? It doesn't come from trying harder. It comes from doing less, from trusting that your presence, your calmness, your breath, your stillness is already enough. Alina told me later, "Now I notice the energy before I speak. If I'm talking to fill silence, I stop. I breathe. If I'm speaking from peace, I continue." That's what awareness does. It gives your voice purpose again. When she walks into a room now, you can feel it. She doesn't need to say much. Her energy regulates the space around her. People lower their voices, sit straighter, breathe slower. Not because she demands it, but because she embodies it. That's what presence does. It balances the room without effort. It heals without preaching. It invites peace without saying a word. So if you've ever felt like you talk too much, or like silence makes you uncomfortable, remember Alina. She learned that silence isn't rejection, it's reflection.
It's the moment where your energy speaks for you. And in that stillness, something sacred happens. You stop performing, and people finally get to meet the real you.
When love meets stillness, something changes. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, but you can feel it, like the quiet shift in the air right before dawn. See, a woman rooted in peace doesn't love to prove her worth. She doesn't chase, debate, or argue to be seen. She doesn't say, "If I can explain myself just right, maybe he'll understand." Because she knows love built on persuasion isn't love at all. It's negotiation. And real love doesn't need to be negotiated. When a woman loves from wholeness, not from fear, her presence alone becomes an invitation, not a demand. She no longer gives her energy to convincing someone to stay. She gives it to creating an energy where the right one naturally wants to. You can feel this difference. It's the moment you stop trying to fix the relationship and start nurturing your own peace. It's when you realize that your calm is more powerful than your arguments, that your silence carries more truth than your explanations. Stillness doesn't mean indifference. It means clarity. It's standing in love, but without losing yourself in it. Let me say something that might surprise you. Love isn't always about passion. Sometimes it's about presence. Because passion can burn bright, but presence sustains warmth. A woman in her stillness doesn't attract chaos. She creates a space where only truth can exist. And here's the thing, not everyone is comfortable in that kind of peace. Some people need drama to feel alive. But those who are ready for real connection, they'll find her stillness magnetic. Because it's rare, it's healing, it's home. When love meets that energy, that quiet confidence, it transforms. It stops being about control or validation or fear of loss. It becomes something simpler, deeper, more honest. You stop trying to win love and you start being love. I once heard a man describe his partner like this: "She doesn't try to calm me down. She just is calm. And somehow that calms me." That's the power of stillness in love. It doesn't need to manage, it doesn't need to fix. It simply creates a frequency where peace is the only language. And in that space, something sacred happens. The relationship becomes a mirror, not a battlefield. You no longer need to fight for understanding because you embody it. You no longer fear losing love because you no longer lose yourself. That's what happens when love grows from presence instead of panic. It's love without control, without performance, without anxiety. And the ones who belong in that energy, they don't run from it. They relax into it. Because peace doesn't push, it welcomes. So if you've ever wondered, why do I keep attracting chaos? Maybe it's because chaos was familiar. Maybe it once felt like love.
But when you finally learn to rest in your stillness, when you stop reacting, stop overgiving, stop chasing what isn't yours, something incredible happens. Peace becomes your new normal. And from that vibration, the people who align with truth start to appear, quietly, naturally, without effort. You don't have to make them stay. You don't have to prove your value. You don't even have to speak much, because your energy says everything. And that's the secret. The right people don't stay because you entertain them. They stay because they feel safe being themselves with you. They stay because your calm gives them permission to exhale. So when love meets stillness, it isn't the end of passion, it's the beginning of peaceful intimacy. It's the kind of connection that doesn't drain you, it restores you. It doesn't need fireworks. It glows quietly, like candlelight that never burns out. Because love, in its highest form, isn't something you chase. It's something you allow. And when your heart is still enough, it always finds its home.
There's a moment in every conversation, a small, invisible crossroads where you get to choose. Will I react or will I reflect? Most people never see that moment. They go straight from trigger to reaction, from feeling to defense. But a woman who's learned the art of self-mastery, she pauses, she breathes, she lets the storm pass through her without becoming it. You can see it in her eyes. When someone raises their voice, she doesn't hit back. She doesn't try to win the moment or prove her point. She keeps her breath steady, her gaze soft but unwavering. And that stillness, that quiet presence, changes everything. It's not weakness, it's power in its purest form. Because energy is contagious. When you meet fire with fire, the room burns. But when you meet fire with calm, the flame has nothing left to feed on. That's what I call the silent language of presence. It's communication that doesn't rely on words. It's the tone of your nervous system, the energy behind your gaze, the steadiness of your breath. Imagine this. You're in the middle of an argument. Someone's voice is rising, the energy is charged, and you feel your chest tighten. Every part of you wants to defend yourself, to explain, to fix it. But instead, you take a slow inhale. You ground your feet, and you simply listen. Not to agree, not to surrender, but to stay aware. That one breath, that pause, shifts the entire dynamic, because your calm nervous system sends a new signal into the room. There's no war here. And the other person's body, even if their mind doesn't notice it, starts to relax too. This is how emotional intelligence looks in motion. It's not about having perfect words, it's about holding perfect awareness. I've seen this play out in couples, families, even business settings. When one person stays regulated, the conversation finds its balance. You don't have to dominate the space, you just have to stabilize it. And when you can do that, people feel it. They feel your presence more than your position. You might think, but if I don't stand up for myself, won't I look weak? No. Because calm doesn't mean submissive. It means anchored. It's the difference between reacting from emotion and responding from truth. True self-command isn't about controlling others. It's about mastering your own energy so deeply that no one else can pull you off center. I remember once during a workshop, a man asked, "How do I get my partner to stop yelling?" And the teacher smiled and said, "Stop joining the argument." Everyone laughed, but it was profound, because it takes two nervous systems to sustain chaos. When one stays calm, the other eventually sinks to it. That's what happens when a woman chooses reflection over reaction. She becomes the mirror that reveals, not the echo that repeats. Her calm exposes what's really happening beneath the noise. And that's something men, especially emotionally mature men, find magnetic. Because your stillness doesn't challenge their ego, it invites their awareness. It says, "I see your pain, but I won't absorb it. I see your fire, but I won't add to it." That's what peace with boundaries looks like. It's not a performance, it's not a tactic, it's the byproduct of self-respect. When you no longer need to win, you stop losing energy. When you no longer need to prove, you start radiating truth. And in that silence, in that soft but unshakable energy, you become a reflection of everything the world is missing: calm, clarity, composure. So the next time someone tries to pull you into their chaos, don't react, don't explain, just breathe. Let your eyes stay gentle, your shoulders relaxed, your heart steady. Because your peace will say everything words never could. And that right there, that's the real conversation.
Before every word you speak, something sacred happens. A breath. It's so small, so simple, we barely notice it. But that breath determines everything. The tone of your voice, the energy you project, the way others feel in your presence, it all begins there, in that single inhale. Most people rush it. They speak while holding their breath, or they speak on top of tension. Their throat tightens, their chest collapses, and their voice comes out strained, even if their words are calm. But the body never lies. The secret to powerful communication isn't in perfect phrasing, it's in alignment. When your breath, your mind, and your voice move as one. Before you speak, pause for a second. Take a deep, slow inhale. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw soften. Feel the air move through your chest and into your belly. This is how you activate your vagus nerve, the bridge between mind and body, the system that tells your whole being you're safe. When that happens, your body enters a state scientists call calm alertness. You're awake but peaceful. You're strong but open. It's the state every great communicator lives in, not aggressive, not timid, simply centered. When you speak from that place, you don't need to push your words. They flow. They carry weight not because you forced them to, but because they're born from grounded energy. You ever meet someone whose voice makes you instantly relax? It's not because they're loud or charismatic. It's because their nervous system is settled. Their breath is slow. Their tone is steady. And your body, unconsciously, mirrors that rhythm. That's the power of a regulated voice. It's magnetic, not in the way that demands attention, but in the way that invites it. Try this the next time you're about to speak, especially in a moment of tension or importance. Before you open your mouth, notice your breath. If it's shallow, pause. Take one full, slow inhale, then exhale slowly, as if you're releasing every ounce of pressure you've been holding. Now, speak from that space. You'll feel the difference immediately. Your words won't be rushed, they'll be deliberate. Your tone won't tremble, it'll resonate. And most importantly, you'll feel your own authority, not the kind that comes from ego, but from embodiment. Because when the body is calm, the voice becomes truth. This is something ancient traditions have always understood. Monks chant not to perform, but to synchronize breath and awareness. Singers warm up by loosening the jaw, opening the throat, aligning posture, because a free voice begins in a free body. You can't sound grounded if you're not grounded. And this isn't just spiritual, it's physiological. Your voice literally vibrates through your body, through the chest, the spine, the skull. When you breathe fully, your entire nervous system becomes the amplifier. That's why people can feel sincerity, not just hear it. So before you speak your next truth, remember, your breath is your first word. Your body is your instrument, and your calm is your microphone. The more you align them, the less you'll ever need to prove yourself through tone, volume, or force. Because you'll no longer perform confidence, you'll become it. A woman who's synchronized with her own breath doesn't need to chase attention. Her presence commands it, not through control, but through coherence. She doesn't say, "Listen to me." Her energy says, "I am here." And when your energy, your breath, and your voice flow together like that, your words don't just communicate, they connect. They don't just reach the mind, they reach the nervous system of the person in front of you. So speak from that still, grounded place within. Because when your body is calm and your breath is deep, you don't need to sound powerful. You are power itself.
At the end of the day, what makes a woman truly magnetic isn't how loud she speaks, it's how deeply she listens. Her words don't chase attention, they create peace. Her boundaries aren't walls, they're invitations to meet her in truth. And her calm isn't indifference, it's mastery. When she speaks from presence, she doesn't need to prove her worth. When she listens from stillness, she doesn't need to control the outcome. Her energy already carries everything she wants to say. Because love, real love, can only grow in clarity, and clarity can only live where the heart is quiet. So, take a breath, slow down. Before you speak, feel your body. Before you react, return to your center. That's where your power lives, not in the noise, but in the silence beneath it. Remember this, you don't have to ask for respect when you embody it. You don't have to chase love when you are love.
And the woman who learns this truth never loses herself again.